All right. So just to repeat, everything I'm going to talk about is going to be in here under 01 lecture plan. And then if you click here for lectures, we have first 4 semesters are here. I only started doing this last year, so it starts at 3rd semester, where all the videos for 3rd semester are in there right now. And you can have a look at those if you want. They're a little bit advanced for you right now, but if you want to jump ahead, you can look at that stuff. And gradually over the course of the semester, I'm going to put in all the stuff here for 1st semester. Okay, just so you have keep track of the whole thing. Now, Revit. You can actually follow along with this lesson if you want to. I'm going to do it on the screen, and then I'm going to come around and give you a hand. So there's a little bit of a practical stuff going on. It's not just going to be a lecture, because that wouldn't get very far. But first of all, just to introduce it, this is the title screen. We've got a beautiful cable going across the projector there. So, but over here underneath the cable, there is also some getting started videos. They might be helpful to you as well. They're made by Autodesk, so you can click on those. You can go through some getting started stuff. There is also a link to the Exchange applications, and I'll just show you what they are, because we won't use that so much at the beginning, but they can get useful once we get into a bit more detail in Revit. Because what they actually are, they're applications that are extra plugins into the Revit software. So you can buy apps that plug into Revit to do many different things. There's one I use a lot in the 1st semester, which is it's called it's a Google Earth plugin, which means that you can go into Revit and you can grab information from Google Earth about land and so forth, including contours and graphical information, and you can grab it and take it directly into Revit, so you can start a project very quickly without doing a land survey or whatever. It's not completely accurate, but it's enough to start, thinking about a project, and it's a useful one to have. So there's lots of apps in here under the application Exchange. The front page is divided into 2. We've got projects on the top and families on the bottom. And families are effectively anything that is not a building that you want to make that's going to insert into your project. So here you've got some furniture. You've got a table here. We've got a roof truss here. I'm not sure what this is, but I'm sure it's something that sticks on the wall. It could be like a toilet or a wash hand basin or something like that. Those are all families, and they're a slightly different process to make a family than it is to make a project. And we'll get into families after about a couple of months, and we'll get you to make your own window or something like that. So you can start to understand how that works. If you've installed the Kia template, you should have these 4 options along the side here. The architectural template, structural template, systems template, construction template. In the 1st semester, we're only thinking about the architectural template. Because we're just designing the building. We're not worried too much about the structure of the building. I mean, you'll be doing lectures on structures, but it's a little bit too advanced to start talking about structures straight away. So we'll leave that until at least the 2nd semester. Systems template, I'm not going to talk about it all, because I'm not a systems engineer. But systems are to do with the pipes that go through the house, all the electrical cables, the toilets, all that kind of stuff. It's quite a simple process to get into. It's not necessary for this course to get into it, for the simple reason that you can spend a long time designing a ventilation system perfectly, but it'll still never be correct because you're not an engineer, so you haven't done the calculations completely correctly. So it's almost like a waste of your time. So we're not going to get into the system so much at all. You can get, well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, we can use it for certain things, but not everything. And construction template is just to set up a project for construction. So to set up the scheduling, set up all the different pieces and so on. At the moment, we're going to start with architectural template. So I'm just going to open an architectural template just by clicking on it. And you should get something like this. So on the left-hand side here, I've got the project browser. And on the right-hand side here, I've got a properties dialog box. You can take these and move them around. You can delete them and all that kind of stuff. I can put this over here if I want, side by side or whatever. I keep it over here for the purposes of the. If I can just see it behind those cables. Let's see if I can get it plugged in again over there. There we go. For the class, I'll keep it over there just because it makes it clear. If you've managed to delete them and they've disappeared, they're under, you can always find them again. They're under this View tab at the top here. And all the way over to the right, there's a button called User Interface. Now, if you can see that behind the cable, there's a series of tick boxes in there, and you can switch this on and off. I'm going to get on to the management about this cable. This is just ridiculous. So anyway, you can switch it on and off over here, and you can decide what you want to do. I switched on the wrong one there because I can't see what's going on over there. There we go. These are the two main information sources that you have in your project. Over here we've got all the views. So we've got floor plans, we've got level 1, level 2, and we've got a site level. That's what you start with. That's what you're set up with. We've also got ceiling plans, which you don't need to get into, certainly not in the first semester. 3D views, elevations. Everybody knows what an elevation is. It's just like a flat side view of a building. And when we start drawing them, we'll also have cross sections in there as well. Down here we have schedules and quantities, which we're not going to really talk about until later in the semester. But if these are very, very powerful and very, very useful. It's actually the point of building information modeling is to make a schedule. Because it means if you make a model of a building, you can press a button and it generates, for example, how many windows are in this building and what they're called, what their type is, and so on. And you can just send that directly to a window manufacturer, and you don't have to do any more work than that. So that's the big saving of building information modeling from an architect's point of view. So schedules are in here, and in here you can make lots of different types of schedules, and you can program your own schedules and so on. Down here we have sheets. And sheets are basically just what you want to print out. So this is where you set up your piece of paper. This is where you put your drawings on it, and all your schedules and all your quantities and so on. At the moment, we've only got one sheet in the project, and that's this one here. And that's just set up for the Kia template, which allows you very quickly, if you double-click slowly on this here, you can fill in, for example, let's put the client in here as me, Shane. And the project name as first semester, let's call it first semester, and we won't worry about the rest of the stuff at the moment. So that updates the title block here, but it's not just on this page here, it updates it in the entire project. So that means every time you set up a new sheet, the client name and the project name are automatically there. You don't have to repeat work, and that's the big benefit of this software, is that you should only have to fill in information in one place, and it's repeated automatically through the scheme, if you're doing it right, that is. Okay, so what I think we're going to do to start off with is, rather than just going through, well, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the top menu to start off with. I've already talked about the views. We don't need to worry about that right now. What we need to worry about is this architecture tab. Now the architecture tab, and I'm just going to go into level 1 so it's not so grayed out. This has got all the elements that you need to make your building model, and it looks like a child's program to start off with, especially if you're used to AutoCAD. It all seems very childish. Walls, doors, you know. But why does it need to be more complicated than that? You know. So in here is walls, doors, windows, you know, columns. It's as simple as that. You know, it means what it says. Each of these elements has certain settings you need to work on, but basically, if you want to make a stair, you press the stair button. You know, it is as simple as that. Okay, you can't start making anything unless you go into one of these floor plans. So I'm going to start at level 1. Now, I think what I'm going to do is Neil's just given you some houses, and let's just go and find that on Fronter. He's under general information. Main assignment here. So he's giving it to you as a Word file. So what I want to do is I want to take those sketches that Niels has made, and I want to insert them into Revit so we can trace them, so we can start making the model directly from his sketches. So let's have a look at them. Has anybody started drawing these yet by hand? No, not this one. This one?
It's not that one.
Huh? Has it given you another project?
Yeah.
Oh. Where is that then?
Introduction.
What?
Introduction.
Introduction. This one. Well, let's have a look at this. Maybe this won't suit the Revit project. Okay, this is the introduction project where he's giving you to do an extension, yeah. It's probably a bit too small. We want to get a bit more meat in the Revit stuff, but let's have a look at it anyway. Maybe we'll just do the house. Annex to a summer house. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is your introduction one. I'm gonna use the one I was talking about just because it gives us enough. There's enough stuff in it that we can draw something. Otherwise, we're not going to be drawing very much. So I'm going to take one of these houses, and I'm going to take them one where we can see some of these squares, because often when you're planning a house, let's use this one here because the squares are very visible. It's an easy way to draw this, to draw it on squared paper, because then you can say, well, each square is relevant to 900 millimeters or whatever. And all construction materials have some kind of relationship to 300 millimeters module. So if you're working in 900 millimeters, you can be pretty sure that you can get products off the shelf without having to cut them that will work with this house. So that's why you often use squared paper to make a layout like this. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy it out. I'm going to save the image as a picture. I'm just going to save it on the desktop, and I'm just going to call it house 1. So then if I go back into Revit, I should be able to go into the insert tab and import the image here. Go to my desktop and go to house 1, and then I could just stick the image in like that, so it's ready to work on. Is everybody following along? Is anybody following this? Yeah. Okay. Just if I'm talking too fast, just please put up your hand, or if you want me to repeat something, put up your hand. Now we've inserted this image, but it doesn't have any scale because the Revit environment is specific. It's in millimeters, so we need to scale it up according to the millimeters that we have. Now, which plan is this? Is that a ground floor plan? Yeah. Okay. This is the ground floor plan at the bottom here. So I'm just going to put this in the middle. And I'm going to select the image, and once you select anything in Revit, you get this modify panel at the top here, and this allows you to do lots of things. Align from one object to another, for example. Move things, copy things, offset things. We'll go through it gradually over the next couple of weeks, but what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to scale it. So this button here is scale. So I'm going to scale the image. I'm going to zoom in to one of these corners, and we can see that Niels has drawn here that it's a 900 by 900 square. So I'm going to select the corner of the square. I'm going to select the other end as close as I can, and then I'm going to change it to 900. So now we have a sketch that's, it's not entirely accurate, but it's close enough to start drawing over in Revit. Let me just look over there on the right. Okay. So the next thing we need to do, because this grid has been set up nicely for us, what I want to do is I want to set up a grid exactly like this, so that the logic of the module is continued through. So we go back to the architecture tab, and once I finish doing this, I'm going to stop and I'm going to get you to do it. Okay, so that's when the fun starts. So over here, under these cables on the right here, yeah, I think it's there. is grid. Now I can actually take a grid line and I can draw a grid line across like this. And you can see that the grid line has been set up as grid line number 1. I'm just going to move it around a little bit using the arrow keys until I'm pretty sure it's kind of in the center of that sketch behind. Okay, now I want to have a grid line at each one of these lines, but I don't want to copy it and do it individually each time. So the way I do that is I select the line, and once again when you select it, the modify tools turn up here. So now I can use this array tool, and the array tool, like all these commands, if you just leave your cursor sitting on top of the command, it shows you a little video as to what each tool does. So what the array tool does, it actually copies as many times as you want. So I'm going to array. I'm going to make sure it's a linear array, because we have the option to make it linear in a row or in a curve, radial array. I don't want to make it into a group because I want them all to be individual grid lines. And we probably need, I'm just going to guess, around about 30 of them. So 30 grid lines. Now all we need to do is click the starting point and the distance we want between the grid lines. So I'm going to type 900, and they've made a grid line for each one. Okay. I'm going to repeat the process the opposite direction. So architecture tab all the way over to, you probably won't have cables in your screen. Under the cables here there's a button called grids. I'm going to just draw a grid line down here. And it probably only needs to go to the end of the plan here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all the ones we don't need. Oh, don't want to delete the elevation. Now, if you notice that the grid lines automatically number themselves, and it's continuing on here, but usually you have, alphabetical going one direction and numbers going the other direction. So if I change this, for example, I can click on it twice. Whoops, it's not doing what I want it to do. If I click on it, I can change it to an A. And that means that when I array this again, using the array tool, we want it to do linear, we want to number 20, let's say. Click here and click 900. It automatically letters it as well for us, so it does all that stuff for you automatically. Okay, hi Begita. Okay. So now we've got something. We've got a basic setup for the for the grids. It's a little bit unclear. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change. Or maybe I'll hold a pause there, and we'll get everybody to do it. And then, if I can get this to switch off, I will. Oh, why is nothing working today? Okay, guys, so everybody is, well, most people have more or less got something going on. So if you've got something like this, you have the initial module set up for the house. Now, you don't need, a grid line like this is usually used, like for example, if you draw it here, it's used where the main structural elements of the building are. But we want to use it as just like a design element. We just want to use it to to space the house out in such a way that each room is a multiple of the module. So we don't need that much structure in it. We don't need a structural element every 900 millimeters in a house, unless you want to withstand some kind of bombing situation or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I want to turn these grid lines into a different type of grid line, a more background type idea, so it actually has the same impression as the squared paper. So this is just to get you started on modifying elements in Revit, because everything works this way. If it's a wall, if it's a window, if it's a door, it's the same process. So first thing I'm going to do is modify this grid line type. It would be helpful if we could move the cable out of the way there, because in actual fact a lot of this stuff is going to happen over here. Or maybe I'll just move, maybe I'll just try and move this over here like this so people can see what's happening. Okay. Okay, so if I select this grid line, if you watch the properties palette over here, I select this grid line. So now you can see that it's showing me the details of that type of grid line that I've selected. If I press this button here, I can go down and choose different types of grid line for that position. And they might have a different kind of line type. It might have a dotted line. It might have a dashed line. It might not have a letter or a number on top. I'm going to make my own grid line. So the way we do that is we select the one that we want to base it on, and then we just press this button called Edit Type. And this will allow us to duplicate the grid line. So edit the type, and I'm going to duplicate it so we don't change the existing grid lines. We just want to make a new type of grid line. So I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call it first semester grid line. Okay. So now we can change what's going on in here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to change the color of it. I'm going to change it to a kind of a gray color. And I want to change the line type, and I'm going to change it maybe to, what will I change it to, a this one here, which is like a dotted line. And I don't want to have any grid heads. I don't want to have those letters and numbers on this, because I just want to use it as a basis for the building. So I'm going to say none. Once I've done that, I press OK, and you can see the first grid line over here has been changed to a different type. Okay. So now I want to change everything to the same type. So I'm just going to, what you can do in Revit, you can actually select everything together. So if I click this with the left click, I can right click and say select all instances visible in view or in entire project. So I'll just say an entire project. So now it's selected all of those grid lines. Now I can come over here and change it to the new first semester grid line that I wanted, which is like this. So now we have kind of a nice background to our to set up our project. The last thing we can do is I'm going to select the image, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to select this pin. And what that does is it means you can't move the image by accident. You can't delete it by accident. So if I press pin, a little pin turns up, and if you see that, that means that any element is now stuck to the page and you can't move it by accident. You can click on the pin and you can move it afterwards. You can see the pin comes up like this, and you can click it to go back on again. So now if I try and move that, I can't move it around at all. So that's a nice way to make everything kind of solid. Okay. So does everybody want to try changing their grid line? And I'll just hold this on pause. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do here is just start sketching the building. So we have this grid set up. We can kind of see the building underneath. So I'm going to start using the walls to draw the external walls. Because we set up this grid, it should make our life easier. So I'm going to set wall. Revit often asks you, do you want to save the project? And usually you should say yes, because it does crash, because it is kind of a complicated project. So I'm going to save it on the desktop. I'm going to call it first project. Save. So architecture, wall, and it automatically chooses this basic wall, which is just a 400mm wall. It's got no material assigned to it. It's just like a basic wall to start your drawing, and that's fine for what we need. If we click on this, there's a lot more walls set up in there, but we don't need to use any of those at the moment. So we're going to change. We're going to leave it at 400mm. It gives us along the top here how high we want it to be. So height, whether it's unconnected or connected to a level. At the moment it's 8 meters high, but it's not connected to anything. Let's just leave it like that. And we can choose whether we want to draw from the center line of the wall, from the inner face of the wall, or from the outer face of the wall. And according to this sketch, I can see that Niels has drawn from the wall on the center line there. So we'll change it to the center line. And we can effectively just start and choose a corner here, and we can start to draw the wall around the building like that. I'm not sure what this house looks like, but let's just try and see if we can get it as close as possible. So there we go. So now we've drawn the external wall around the building without any windows, without any doors, anything like that. We're just drawing the walls in to start off with. Again, we want to draw the internal walls in, so I'm going to choose a different type of wall, because the external wall is usually pretty deep. It's got insulation and it's got concrete and so on in it, but inner walls could just be like a frame structure with gypsum or whatever. So I'm going to choose a different generic wall. I'm going to choose a what will I choose? 150 millimeter interior wall here, and I can just go up and start. I can see that actually these walls might be drawn on, not on the center line but on the edge, so I'm going to change it to finish face interior. If I start to draw the wall here like this, you can see that it draws along the line but not at the center of the line, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? Hopefully. And because they're the same material, Revit will automatically link the drawings together, so it looks like they're part of the same material. If they were different materials, you get a different connection situation going on there. So I can just continue to draw. You can see here that the line is drawing on the opposite, or the wall is drawing the opposite side of the line. If you press space, you can flip it over to the side that you want it to draw on, like that. Once you get good at this, you'll have all kinds of keyboard shortcuts going on. You won't need to press these buttons at the top, but I'm going to do it just because it's easy to see. Wall. Can I flip it? Yeah. So there you can see we have a just the starting point for a layout for the building. Because we're drawing in 3D, and everything you do in Revit is in 3D, well, most of everything you do in Revit in 3D, this is also being drawn in 3D. So if I go up and press, this is hidden on my screen here because of the projector, but you should have this little house icon at the top of your screen there. What this is a shortcut to a 3D view. So if I press this, you can see what we've drawn here. The walls on the outside were set to 8 meters, and the walls on the inside, if I select them, we can see that they were set to 3.2 meters. If I go into the elevational view, which is the side view, we can see that these are the grid lines, and this is what we've drawn so far, and there's the levels. Okay.
How did you get your settings to like the orbit mode?
Yeah, that's a shortcut. Sorry. If we go into 3D again, if I hold down the Shift key and I hold down the mouse button, you can just very quickly just rotate the model around like that and have a look at it from all angles. Now, because we didn't think about the heights of the walls or anything like that, it's just all different heights. But the nice thing about Revit is you don't need to specify the height as long as you have floor levels in there. So we have a floor level 1 and a floor level 2, and Revit automatically sets them up at 3.2 meters, 3,200 millimeters between them. We can go to the walls. We can do this in 3D, we can do it in plan view, we can do it in elevation view. I can select all these walls. If I just let the cursor sit on top of one of them, press the tab button, it selects all the connected walls of the same type. And then if I click, they're selected. Once I do that, I can come over to the Properties tab and I can change the top constraint, as in what's stopping the wall, and I can change that to level 2. And if I apply that, the walls now go up to level 2. The nice thing about that is, if I go back into the elevation, if I want to change the height of level 2, if I want to change this to, let's say, 6 meters for some reason, the walls automatically follow. So let's see how many sheets of things we've got in here. I'm just going to close this down. Close this down. So if I've got a 3D view here, and I've got a plan view here, if I say I want to change this, and you can just move it up and down, it's connected to the level. That means after, when you're designing a building and the client comes back and says, well, actually I want to change the floor heights here, you can just press a button and change it, and the walls will automatically follow. You don't need to redesign everything afterwards. So that's kind of the key to being efficient about it. You can see that I haven't changed the these walls here to adapt to the height of the level. So if I move the levels down a little bit more again, you can see these walls are maintaining their height, because if I select them, they've been set to unconnected and to a height of 3.2. So now I can go and connect them again up to level 2. And so this one has been brought down to the right level. So if I go and click on this and say select all instances in project, top constraint level 2, apply, they all become the same level. So now if I stretch the floors up again, everything follows everything else. Okay, so that's kind of a key concept to using Revit, is that the levels, you need to connect things to levels in order to make your life be easy. Okay, what time are we at? I can't see anything on this screen. 9:41. Okay, does everybody want to give all that stuff a go? And I'm going to hold a pause on the recording here, and I'm going to give you a hand, and then I think I have a later today where we'll take it a bit further. Yeah. Blank. Okay, so this is what we did yesterday, more or less. We've got a house with some basic walls, and we use the wall tool here to create the walls. Now, the thing to remember about Revit is that everything you do that's not under this annotation tab is in 3 dimensions. So we're going to get into annotations later, but at the moment, if we've drawn a wall here, then this wall has a 3-dimensional aspect to it. And if I press this little button up here, which is a shortcut to a 3D view, you can see that actually this is what we drew. So it wasn't just a wall. It was actually sorry, it wasn't just a wall in plan view. It's a wall in 3 dimensions. We can select one of these walls individually now, and let's see. Maybe we can get it parallel here. Let's get rid of this one. If I select one of these walls, you can see that there is a direct connection between the plan view, as in the top-down view, and the 3D view. Also, when I select the walls, the properties palette on the right-hand side here gives us all the information regarding the walls. So we can see here, first of all, that the base constraint of the wall is level 1. So that means that the wall is actually sitting on level 1. If I go into a side view, an elevation view, and I look at the wall, I can see that level 1 is where the bottom of the wall is. So all these things are, they relate to each other. The other thing we can do here is, okay, so we have a wall and we have a base constraint, but we also have a top constraint. And at the moment, the top constraint is level 2. But if I take that off, if I say unconnected, we can actually give that wall any height that we want. Like, let's make it 9 meters high, for example. So it's not constrained by anything. So we can make the wall 9 meters high, and we could probably bring it as far up as you want. But the beauty of constraining it, if I select it again and change top constraint to level 2, bring it back down again, the beauty of that is that if we want to change the distance between the levels, at the moment it's set to 3.2, which is the standard Revit setup when it starts. If I wanted to change the level, if I go into the elevation here and I want to say, well, I've decided that, it's a 3. If I've decided I want to set it to 4.5 meters high. I'm just going to go over here so you can see it. And as soon as I press enter, the wall will also extend to the new level. So that's kind of the time saver on it. If you have a client who suddenly decides that they want this floor level to change, or you get to a point in the design where you realize you haven't made enough room for the pipes in the ceiling in your office building and you need to make the floor slightly higher, it's just a question of changing this value here, and everything else will stretch to take that into account. So if you're used to making hand drawings, or you're used to making drawings in AutoCAD where you have to redraw everything each time, this here is it's thousands of man hours you saved by just this single function here. So that's something to remember. You should always think very carefully about constraining. So if you have a wall, of course you have a base constraint, but then you can give it a top constraint too. Okay. There's a lot of other functions to do with the walls in here, and I'm going to go through that in detail in a couple of months when I go through how to make your own wall types and so on. But this basic constraints at the top here is what you need to concern yourself with just to start off with. Everything else we can figure out later. Okay. So we've drawn the first level. Let's bring it back down. Let's make it. Why not just make it 3.2 again? So the wall's at 3.2. Now what I'm thinking is, if I look at the sketch here that Niels has, he seems to have a double height. He's got a room here, and a roof level, and then he's got a double height space in the middle here. So, you know, it's kind of a funky 70s disco building. So let's see what we can do to make that easy to set up in Revit. We have level 1, but let's change the names of level 1 so it means something. So I'm going to call this ground floor plan. Ground floor plan. And Revit asks you, would you like to rename the corresponding views? So what it's saying is, you know, everything should link up together, and yes, I do. I want to rename the corresponding views. So you can see over here, the floor plan has renamed ground floor plan. We can do the same thing. And we can do this here, or we can do it up here. So let's just try and rename it up here. This one I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call it first floor plan. And again, would you like to rename the corresponding views? I say yes. And now I'm going to create a new level for the roof. So the way to create a new level is you actually just take a level that's existing and you copy it. So you can use a keyboard shortcut, or like everything in Revit, you can just use the modify panel. So I'm going to select it, go up to copy, and then I can just select where I want it to start from, and I can select how high I want it to be. So let's make it, I don't know, 2.6 meters high. And be careful you don't do it crooked like I did there, actually. Let's try that again. Copy, and make sure it's perpendicular, and we're going to make it 2600 high. So now we've got level 3, and I'm going to rename that. Whoops, I'm going to rename that, if I can zoom into it. I'm going to call it roof level. So we've 3 levels in the building now. And one thing that confuses students a lot when they start off with this stuff is, okay, I've made 3 levels, but Revit hasn't created a new drawing over here for the roof level. You'd expect to do that. The reason it doesn't do that is often you have levels in a building that you don't necessarily want to have a drawing of, because they might only have, you know, 600 millimeters between them or whatever. You need them for your modeling, but you don't need to actually make a drawing of it, so you don't give it an actual drawing name. But we want to have a drawing of the roof because we need to tell somebody how to build the roof. So the way to get a drawing of a new level you've made is you use the view tool at the top here. Anytime you need to do anything with views, whether it's plans, sections, elevations, 3D views, it's always in the view tool here. So we go to views, and I'm going to go into plan views and floor plans. And here you can see the level that we just made exists, but it doesn't have a drawing associated to it. So all I need to do is make sure it's selected, and because it's the only one here, it's automatically selected, and I just press OK. And if you watch the panel over here, the new roof level has appeared. So now we have a drawing of the roof level ready to work on. There's nothing on the drawing yet because we haven't done anything. But what you can do in Revit if you're trying to set something up is you can change the underlay. This is roof level, yeah. So this is roof level. We're going to change the underlay to something like the ground floor plan. So now we can see what's happening underneath the plan. So now we can trace over or copy things or whatever between the ground floor plan. It comes out in a kind of a grey color, but it allows us to set up anything underneath. And once you're finished doing that, once you're finished modeling it, you can switch it off again because you don't necessarily want to see all the walls and everything in the floor underneath when you're trying to design a floor. Okay.
If you're working on the roof level and have the ground floor level showing, is the ground floor like pinned, or is it like, or you can still modify it even though you're
you can still modify it.
Okay.
You can still modify it. You need to pin it if you think it's going to be moved around, but you know, once you get a little bit of expertise on it, it won't be such a problem. It'll be something you do automatically. So let's have a look at the how many screens have we got open here? Okay, we'll shut that down. Shut down the elevation. So we've got a kind of a complex roof situation here. Now, according to Niels's drawings here, it seems like the so the external walls are continuous, but the internal walls aren't. Okay, what we can actually do is, if we, just to show you in 3D how you do this, at the moment everything is stretched to the same position, but there are different types of walls, so I'm going to modify them so that if I select this wall and then right click, and I can select all instances of the same type of wall. So it's not selecting the external walls, it's only selecting the internal walls. And we can see that the base constraint here is ground and the top constraint is first floor, so that's fine. So that's fine for the ground floor level internal walls. But the external walls go all the way up to the roof, so I want to change the top constraint of all these. If I take the cursor over and let it just sit on top of the wall without clicking anything, and then I press the tab button on the keyboard, it selects all connected walls of the same type. And then if I click, it means they're selected. Okay? I'll just go do that again because that's quite a useful shortcut. Just move the cursor without touching any buttons so that it sits on the wall and the wall begins to highlight itself. Then I press the tab button. The entire wall becomes highlighted, and then I left click and it's selected, rather than going around and individually selecting each wall. Now I can change the constraints of all these. Rather from up to first floor, I can change them to go up to roof level. So you can see that, so now we have the external walls going up to roof level and the internal walls going up to first floor level. Okay? The way you spin the 3D around, if you want to, is you hold down the tab key and then you hold down the mouse button, and then you can just rotate the 3D model like that, rather than going into all these various tools and stuff. You can also use these tools, but it's easier just to use the shortcuts. So hold down Shift and hold down the mouse button, and you can do that.
Shift or tab?
Shift. You hold down Shift. Tab is what you use if you want to select more than one wall. Yeah, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Okay. So we can see, if I switch on the shadows here, I can come down here to the bottom and say shadows on. We can see that the wall, the building has some kind of three-dimensional aspect to it. But we don't have any floors in there yet. So next thing we need to do is put in some floors. Okay. So easy way to put in floors is to go back to the ground level. So we'll go back to ground level, which is here. And I think at this stage I'm just going to switch off the image behind, because we're not going to do anything with the image for the moment. So I'm just going to click on it, right click, and I can hide the image in the view. So we just have the pure drawing now. If we want to get it back again, we can come down here and we can reveal hidden elements, and then we can switch it back on again. But let's just leave it off for the moment. Okay, so we need to put a ground floor in, otherwise you're just going to be, you know, standing on empty space. So I'm going to switch off this one, and I'm going to bring the 3D over so you can see what happens while we're working. Let's just make it like that. Okay, so like everything in Revit to do with modeling, the buttons up here mean what they say. So I go into the architecture tab where all the modeling tools are. I can go over until I find a floor tool, and you can just leave it on here. It gives you a little movie or a little picture as to how it works. And we have several options in here. And to start with, we don't need to worry about structural floors, we don't need to worry about face floors, and we don't need to worry about slab edges. That's more advanced stuff. We just need to worry about a floor, an architectural floor. So I'm just going to click floor. And we get these little drawing tools, and every time you do something in Revit that involves modeling, you get all the drawing tools. And really, this is just a line. If you want to make a line, this is a rectangle. You know, these are just showing you the shapes that you can automatically draw with this stuff. What is also useful is they have an option for just picking the walls. So you can actually pick the walls that define the outside of the floor. So it's as simple as that. So if I say I'm going to pick walls, I can say, well, I want this wall to make a floor, this wall to make a floor, this one, this one, this one, this one, like that. And you can see that the sketch of the floor, which always turns up in pink, is also on the 3D view. These double lines here is something we'll worry about later, but that means span direction. So if there's any carpenters here, this is the direction that the beams will be going in the floor. So you can change that. You can actually change the span direction. If you want them to go long ways for some reason, you can make them go that way and so on. But we don't need to worry about structure for the moment. So let's just leave it like that. Once we're happy with the shape of the floor, you can just press accept, and the floor has been created inside the building. Okay. Now, I like to actually create the floors inside the walls rather than the outside of the walls. So I'm just going to select it again, and the way to select things again is leave the cursor sitting on top of the walls, press tab until you can see down at the bottom here that it's selecting the floor and not the walls that you want. Once it's selecting the one thing you want, click it, and we can edit the boundary. And we can actually go in and just select all this stuff, and we can drag it in if we want to. We can drag it in to the inside of the building. Because there might be some conditions where the slab is inside the building and some conditions where the slab is outside the building, depending on how you're designing the house. But it's usually a good starting point to start with the slab inside the building because it's easier to insulate. So let's just do that. You might notice every time I move one of these and I move it back again, whoops, there is a little lock icon that's turning up. And that's similar to the constraint for the wall that we were talking about earlier. If I lock that to that edge of the wall, what that means is that I can't move this wall without the floor coming with it. So you have the option to lock things together so that everything moves together like that.
How did you do that?
Let's just show you. If I want to change the shape of this wall, if I move it away, and then if I move it back, it sees that it's beside the wall, and then you get a little lock icon. And I can click that on, so now it's locked to the wall. And if I'm happy with that, I can just press this finish edit mode, the green tick mark again. And the floor has been created inside the walls. So if I go in here, you can see the floor is sitting inside the walls there. Does everybody want to give that a go?
Yeah.
Or have you already done it? So give it a go. All right. I'll pause. Okay, so we got this far, and we've got this this kind of empty house. So next thing we want to do is make a floor on the upper level, and there's a couple of ways of doing this. We can either go into the first floor plan and go through the same process that we did with the ground floor plan, or we can just copy the ground floor plan up, because we're not worried about materials at the moment. We just want to get a floor in place. So the easy way to do it is we can go into the 3D view, and if I just let the cursor sit on the edge of the floor here, I can use the tab key until it selects the floor. And you can see at the bottom, it's showing us that it's selected it, and it's showing us at the bottom it's selected floor. Whoops, now I've deselected it. Let's try that again. Then I can click it. Now we've selected the floor here, with all the different things we can do with floors and so on. But all we want to do is we want to copy it. So I'm going to use once we've selected it, we can go to clipboard, and there's two little pieces of paper here, and these are really useful. It's a tiny little icon that's really useful in Revit. So if I click this, copy to clipboard, we get the option to paste it somewhere else. So I'm going to say paste from clipboard and align it to a selected level. So I'm copying it from the ground level, and I want to put it on the first floor level. So align to selected levels. I was asking us to save the project. And I'm going to put it on first floor plan. So now we've got a floor on ground floor and a floor on first floor. Okay, so we can spin that around and have a look at it. What we can also do now, just to give you a little bit of the fun stuff in Revit, is we can put it on a section box, which is this little box here, and now we can take a slice through the building, and we can see what's going on inside it, like that.
How did you do that?
It's just if you don't select anything, so double escape everything, come over here, you've got the qualities of the 3D view, and go down to extents section box. You can click it on or you can click it off.
Oh, section box.
Section box. So this is a box that you can just stretch down through the building, so you can really focus on one element of the building to make a three-dimensional drawing of one element if it's helpful in terms of construction and so on. Okay. So maybe since how much time we got left? About half an hour, 20 minutes. Let's just put a roof on top of it, a simple roof, and that's probably enough stuff for today to get set up for making this stuff. I'll switch the section box off. Now, I go to roof level, and I'm going to type ZA, which means zoom all. So now we can see the elevation signs on the edges. And we want to see the underlay. We want to see what's underneath. So I'm just going to put in the first floor plan, and we can see what's happening on the first floor there. So we can make a roof out of it. And I'm not sure if we go back to the ground floor plan. I'm not sure what type of roof. Is it the idea that the roof is oversailing the entire thing, or I think the roof is oversailing? Okay, let's just give it a go anyway. So, roof level. So I'm going to make a roof that travels over this rectangular portion of the building, and I'm assuming that this bit here is a smaller roof that projects out from the building. So I'm just going to make a very quick roof. So we go up to the architecture tab, like always. We go over to roof, and I'm only going to talk about roof by footprint today. So roof by footprint, which is the same process as making the floor. We can either choose the walls or we can draw it in. I'm just going to draw it in at the moment because it's quicker. So I'm going to say rectangle, and I'm going to just select here, and I'm just going to draw it across until it covers everything like that. So now we've got a shape of a rectangular roof. These symbols here mean that there's a slope coming from each of these edges. So if I accept this roof and I go back into the 3D view, we've made a roof that looks like this. It's got a slope on all sides. So maybe that's not the type of roof you wanted to make for your house. So we can go back in here, select the roof again, edit it. This time around I don't want to slope from here, so I'm going to switch that off. And I don't want to slope from here, so I'm going to switch that off. So let's have a look at what that does for us and go back into the 3D view. So it's going to be something like that. We can also go in and then select the roof once it's made, and we can give it a degrees. Let's change it to 15-degree roof. And the last thing I want to do for today is, okay, we've got a roof, but there's a little bit of a ventilation issue there at the top of the building. So we want the wall to connect to the roof. So I'm going to just select the wall, and I'm going to say attach the top, and then we just select the roof, and it automatically attaches to it. Okay. Again, the beauty of that is that if we go into the elevation now, let's see, is this the good one? If I wanted to change the level of the roof, I can move the level up, and everything should stretch to the correct position. So if these things are changing through the course of the design, you don't need to redraw it every time and create a new set of drawings every time. So let's just go. Yeah.
From where do you touch the roof? Like from what?
You select first you select the element you want to attach to it. So I'm going to select this.
Oh no, like from the beginning when you make the roof.
When you make the roof.
Yes.
I'll do it again.
Sorry.
Let's delete the roof. So we go into the roof level, and then we just go to the architecture tab, and then we go over to roof by footprint. And we can actually just come over, you can use all these different shapes, but I'm just going to use the rectangle for the moment. So rectangle, I'm going to draw it from this corner to this corner. And this time, before I change anything, I'm going to select this and switch off the slope. Just like this. Excuse me. And accept it. And we want to select the wall, attach the roof, and then we can select this, this, and this by holding down the control key and attach to the roof. Okay, let's get this one as well. So there's a basic bones of the house setup. Now the roof isn't really considered, you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do with the roof, but we'll get into that in more detail later on. Yeah?
What happens if you try to attach the little ventilation to the...
Nothing,
Okay.
because it has to be directly above it. Here I'm assuming from it's kind of difficult to tell from the design, but I'm assuming that the roof goes out here, and this little bit has its own, or maybe it doesn't, maybe it has a separate roof out there. Let's do that as an exercise. Okay, so let's go back into the roof level. I'm going to modify it, edit the footprint, and I'm going to draw some more edges to this roof. And I'm going to use this tool here, which is the trim command, which is a very useful tool because it just trims things together for you that are perpendicular. So I'm going to press trim. I'm going to trim this to here. And I'm going to trim this to here. It's very, very important that you have a completely enclosed shape. If there's a little gap, nothing will work. You'll just get error messages. So you have to be very, very careful that you get an enclosed shape. I think what we'll do is we'll switch off this slope, and we'll switch off this slope. And let's have a look at what kind of roof that gives us. So it goes right down like that. It goes much lower. So then all we need to do is select this wall, and say attach to the roof like that. Okay, there's lots of stuff you can do at roofs. I'll go in more detail in about 3 or 4 weeks about that. Okay, any questions? Is everybody tired?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you